Welcome to this Underwater Homeowners Association meeting. And today, um, we as a country um, are divided. We are, according to CNN, just a few, 17 electoral votes shy, a state of Arizona and a state of Nevada shy of getting rid, and I'm happy to say this at the same time, I'm trying to sound healing, the disaster that has been the Trump administration. And hopefully, if the trends continue, there'll be someone else putting his hand on a Bible on January 20th in front of the People's House, the Capitol. But the people will remain divided. And we absolutely are lessened by that. And I just wanted to have a conversation about what now as part of the Underwater HOA meeting. And I wanted to talk to us about that, not knowing what chaos we would be in. It seems as if the chaos is going to get resolved. And I'm going to open this up. I'm going to have a conversation. I want to create a forum here for us to talk. I feel a little bit more hopeful than I did 2-ish in the morning when I saw the president in the East Room declare war on democracy yet again. I'm tempering my words as I speak because actually I want this conversation to go in another direction. And it's hard for me to do that because I can be very partisan. And I think that that doesn't help us where we are. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. But before I do that, I kind of want to just have each and every one of us introduce ourselves and also to speak, just for a couple of minutes about how you're feeling and what you're feeling. So this is a meeting that we sent out to the people, and that's why it's even smaller today. We didn't send it out to a broader group. It's literally to the people who have attended and participated in our Underwater HOA meetings. It is a space that I wanted to get other speakers to come to, but I knew that everyone's focus was going to be on the election, as it still is. And I didn't know where we were going to be as a nation today, right? I know that there's a lot of, as much as I want to be, as much as I want to be a nonpartisan and sort of bringing folks together, there's a lot of hurt as to what happened in Miami-Dade County with a state senator who, Jose Javier Rodriguez, who was the visionary who I hoped would continue leading the Senate and one day the state in addressing sea level rise issues. He lost by 105 votes. We were trying to see if those ballots get cured in the next 2 days, but that is a tremendous, tremendous loss. There was a loss of 2 members of Congress who had a policy or a perspective that was pro science and pro climate. I have no idea what Shalala's replacement is about, but I can tell you that Carlos Jimenez, who is the replacement for Debbie in the southern part of the county in the Keys, is someone who cared sort of about sea level rise, but would not utter the words climate migration or really put attention to the bigger issue that befalls us. So I don't know what policies he's going to bring in Congress. I like him. He's a pragmatic guy. But again, we are in a place where some of the people who had heroic efforts are out of the legislature and they are out of Congress. But we have an incredible champion and an opportunity in the strongest, most environmentally aware fighter that we could ever elect in Daniela Levine Cava. She did not get a Cindy Lerner, who would have been a very strong, I mean, really strong environmental leader on the county dais. She didn't go there. And what we are seeing is a country that isn't just polarized, as in they fight one another, but we don't talk to one another. And this Underwater HOA was built on the premise of trying to talk across that partisan divide. So I wouldn't see you putting a Trump sign on your house and you wouldn't see me putting a Biden sign on house. We would just have a sign with the elevation of our house so we could find some common ground, and led by science, we could ask our policymakers to do something to solve the crisis that we are in now. And all I can tell you is that after this election, I find the need for that conversation and understanding, and as difficult as it sounds, mutual respect, like get in the shoes of the other side, because that other side isn't fading. If anything else, it's hardening. And the issue that we are here about, which is climate change, sea level rise, the future of our community and the ecosystems here, needs the other side to believe so that we can grant enough cover to those who are with us so that they don't get booted out of office for doing the right thing, but also because we don't have the majority so that they can get their policymakers to also understand this. So it becomes a wicked problem that just gets harder and harder to solve as we move forward. At the national level, unless some miracle happens in Georgia in January, I don't, tonight and in January, I don't see us getting control of the US Senate, which means Biden's first year is like Obama's last 6 with McConnell, who will return as majority leader, basically paralyzing a presidency. He can only govern by executive order. That's not going to make the kind of climate emergency changes that we need a bipartisan Senate and House to do. So again, by being polarized and by having a president who is going to, I think, continue to prosecute an agenda of that the election was stolen from him through fraud because every vote was counted, and his believers are going to believe that that really happened, it's going to make it really, really hard for us to take care of things like healthcare, climate justice, social justice, racial justice, voters' rights. And with a Supreme Court that now is embedded and we don't have a Senate to change the structure of it, we are sort of stuck in, as I speak to you, a handful of electoral votes away from winning this thing, what will be a paralyzed presidency unless we find a way to heal this nation. And right now there's a lot of distrust, a lot of hate, and I think groups like Underwater HOA need to do 2 things. One, we need to be better about acting in a way that doesn't create the echo chamber that believes that we are right and everyone else should agree with us. I think it's time to roll up our sleeves, get nurtured here. We come here for lectures. We come here to learn about science. The science that I have learned in these meetings has literally helped transform parts of my practice. I wrote an entire editorial urging people to vote, basically for Biden and Daniela. And the words I use are words that I learned because of our chair, words that I learned because of the speakers who have spoken here. I literally used their words to make the argument that we had a climate emergency and we needed to vote the right people into office. So I do believe that this platform is a platform where we get nurtured, we get inspired, we get fed, we learn, and we create alliances, but we're not going to solve this wicked problem by staying in this room. I, as an artist, have a responsibility to do bigger, bolder, and more visible things in partnership with other institutions to really get this point across so that our mayor can move the climate agenda forward, because she's not going to be able to do it if the people in the second and third floor, the commissioners, don't let her. And she also has to protect her second term, right? So she has to govern in a way that is visionary and bold. She's going to give us that, but in a way that doesn't make her climate platform what happened with Obama and his healthcare platform, which basically just stopped everything from immigration forward in his presidency. So we are at a crossroads. My gut, your gut, is to just take the temperature a little bit higher, right? To continue fighting, to continue pushing. And that's only going to get us farther from where we need to go. So as an Underwater HOA, I want us to come together and talk a little bit about, hey, how you're feeling as an American, as a human being who is just so exhausted and tired and was up really late and has been looking at data all day just to see if we finally get a president who's going to be elected democratically and try to do something, versus keeping a guy who's only going to push us further and further into authoritarian rule and absolutely, indisputably, destroy the environment like he has been doing through his appointments and by doubling down on fossil fuels and by literally being the most destructive force for environmental concerns in this nation, period, bar none, exclamation point, right? So thank God that guy's out of the office. And again, I'm being premature, you know, like this is, my husband brought this in when it was 2:53, you know, and since then, it's like, oh my God, I think hasn't Arizona been called? Are we not just like, are we like 6 away? Has Arizona been called yet? So it's really 6 away, right? Is it 6? Nevada's all that's missing? Okay, so we're 6.
Some of the networks have called Arizona.
Okay, so.
Like HuffPost?
Huh?
Huffington Post has been the one that's given Biden the.
Well, look, again, the point I'm trying to make is that I'm acting as if we've won when we have yet to win. But it's all the gas I got to keep me. It's all the gas I got to keep. It's all the gas I got to keep me through this meeting, right? That in the middle of an ugly, except for Daniela, Miami-Dade County day, and in a day where I can talk all day about.
Xavier, you're quieter now.
You're quieter, yeah.
And I think that's the only point I'm trying to make, that when you believe the bullshit, you're going to act on it. And that's why you saw this state go so red in those counties, that we're at a place where people believe what they want to believe. We focus on our bubbles, on our social media, on our echo chambers. I am distraught that we did not win, Texas and Georgia and Ohio and North Carolina. I am furious that Collins was reelected to the Senate. What's that all about? What's all this polling? Because I was in my echo chamber, right? And the rest of them were in theirs. And the more we keep ourselves that way, instead of find ways that we can find our humanity again, right? And I got a little anger I'm still dealing with, obviously, so tone it down. But I really need to get rid of it. I really need to find that we need to find that space. And that's what I want us to do as a group here. Yeah, I was going to go through introductions, but John, why don't you introduce yourself and then speak?
Yeah.
And then we'll open it up to like a forum for everyone, okay?
Okay, yeah. I'm John Van Leer, work in Brian's Department of Ocean Sciences. Yeah, you, Brian. You looked over your shoulder like you were looking for somebody else. And I've taught at the university for almost 50 years now, and worked as an oceanographer and an inventor and entrepreneur for that time. And I've been very involved with Citizens Climate Lobby, which has a whole different approach in the sense that they are respectful to everybody, and they develop groups within themselves. So they develop people who are conservatives to help sell the ideas of carbon fee and dividend to other people from the conservative point of view, or from the liberal point of view, or from the evangelical point of view. And I think that's that is a powerful thing because you can't convince somebody of some new idea without them feeling that you respect them. So if you show them no respect, if you give them the one finger salute, it's over there. You're not going to get anywhere further than you need to go. So the other thing I would say is that divided government looks like it's in our future, and that's not always a bad thing. It depends on how it's managed. And of course, Mitch McConnell isn't the person I would choose if I had a choice who is managing the other chamber, but he's who we've got. So that I'm somewhat encouraged because we have a plan that is actually capitalist based, that makes money for people, and that is often a common denominator. If people can all profit from doing the right thing, that's a great thing. And I'm very heartened by the progress which Tesla is making in the conversion of our economy towards a sustainable economy by making the right thing cheaper than the wrong thing, and promoting it in a very creative and aggressive way. So while the politicians argue, there's actual progress being made regardless of who's in office. So I find cause for hope, and I'm a little discouraged by the persistent flooding in the street in front of my house while you guys call yourself the Underwater Homeowners Association. I'm not sure you're the genuine article, but we'll let it stand
Yes.
there.
So thanks. So to start, the Underwater HOA was literally about. So it first started as the Future Underwater Homeowners Association, but that
Yeah.
sound like FUHOA. So we changed that. Then we called ourselves the Underwater HOA, and the premise of this was simply to bring awareness to the fact that in the future we had a problem that we needed to solve now. The same way that when a hurricane comes, you follow the track of the hurricane. We may have something happening here by the weekend, and then you prepare for it, right? So that was the
Yeah.
premise for it. And it was an art. It still is.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just pulling
No,
your
it'd be funny
chain
because we're
a
not.
little bit.
It's literally, and I think that's kind of the point I want to get through here, right? Like this month marks the second anniversary of me launching this thing. Actually, Brian and I met 2 years ago this month at an opening of the Underwater HOA meeting that we were doing with the League of Conservation Voters, and it was a campaign that we launched during the fall of 2018, and then elected Brian as our chair during the very first inaugural meeting on January of 2019. And Daniela, the commissioner, my commissioner here, was the person who gave Brian and the rest of us our oath of office. So the incoming mayor, who is going to swear and take her oath of office in a couple of weeks, and I think it's the 17th, and become the new mayor, strong mayor of Miami-Dade County, the second most powerful elected official in our state, was the same one that launched this group officially that day. And since that day, what we have tried to figure out is how to create an organization that elevates that literally helps all of our neighbors, those presently getting flooded, like you and Hope, and others that are going to be flooded in the years to come, a platform to communicate these ideas. And what has happened, and I'm very proud of it, is that we've created a group of people who are really concerned. We meet on a monthly basis. We have then, thanks to Brian mostly, been able to bring the smartest, most relevant speakers on the issue to talk to us. Who gets that kind of access? And we've created something that we're going to continue doing in the months to come. But there needs to be another way too. And the way this started was a more organic thing where you and your neighbors, using a sign, would communicate to one another and try to begin to get the rest of your neighbors to change things. The truth is that in too many ways, we're talking to the choir here, right? The people who are in this room all, I just realized that, I mean, I take it for granted that most of you in this room are with me in being happy that we are 6, electoral college votes away from a change, right? So I am literally in the echo chamber, right? I'm not here to persuade you, right? So we need to go back to the origins of what this organization was, which is how do we use art or these processes to bring in people from outside the fold so that they can understand us better. But what has happened is that we have become, stronger, but, more homogeneous in our way of thinking. And we need a new pattern. And that's when I say what now, faced with a president that is going to have a recalcitrant Senate that's not going to move as fast as the House wants to move on climate, faced with a governor and legislature on the state that, again, in my opinion, do more, give lip service, but don't really do more. The regulatory components of the trying to clean the water in Lake Okeechobee sounds like a voluntary exercise for the developers and the agricultural industry. There's no teeth to that regulation. So the kind of governance that we need to really make hard choices and change so that we have a better future in Miami-Dade County. Right now at the national level, hopefully Biden will do some important things, but not the kind of Biden environmental plan. I don't think he's going to be able to get that through. I hope to God I'm wrong, but I just have a sense. And in Tallahassee, the same thing happens. And what we as citizens, as not political that way, we as citizens need to do is find a way of breaking through each other's campgrounds and start talking with one another. And I kind of want to challenge all of us here at the Underwater HOA to do that. And I myself, as an artist, I'm going to challenge myself to do that. And one way I did that is by creating an installation at the University of Miami campus called the Underwater Boat. And let me just share my screen with you for 1 second so I can share with you what I'm talking about. So over here, so Adam, how do I get myself to the videos that you made? They're right here. No, they're not here. They're
Yeah, you're in the Underwater HOA section. You're not in. Yeah, you would just.
I just put Underwater Vote here, right? Is that the way?
Yep. Dash vote.
So this will just take a second. In less than 1 week, we, the people of the United States of America, are going to make a decision that will critically impact how we will spend the rest of our days on this planet, how future generations will live on this planet, and how many more pandemics we will bring to it. Politicians focus on the here and now. On election day, let's remind them that our lives continue beyond their terms of office. Unless they change our current course of action, skyrocketing carbon emissions will continue to heat the planet, melt polar caps, and bring catastrophe to a peninsula defined by water. Let us all become underwater voters. Let's talk to each other and make sure we elect leaders who will equitably address our climate emergency. So I'm just sort of sharing with you from my perspective. In less than 1 week, what I need to do from my perspective is try to do more things like that go beyond the echo chamber, that try to get the students on our campus to vote. And just like that, I think each of us need to do those things, using the talents, the skill, the platforms the voice that you have, the power that you have, but to try to, sort of heal and reach out. And that's what I say by what now. I say we don't give up. We still keep on fighting. The odds got better. They actually got better in Miami-Dade County for us with Daniela as our mayor. They absolutely got better. Okay, so we need to help her make sure that her environmental and climate agenda moves forward. And I think we do that by being more open, more outward looking, and less in this Zoom room. And I also think that for us as people of Miami-Dade County who love one another, including the people who voted for Trump, we just got to figure out a way of how to talk to them about something other than Trump and create some common ground. And right now, everyone's really hyped up, and there needs to be a place where this changes and we become members of the same team again. And that's a little hard to do. And for us as Underwater HOA folks, it becomes really hard because the problem we're tackling is, in their estimation, decades and decades away. And there's other priorities right now, especially amid a pandemic with so many Miami families who have no income, and they're not getting their checks from COVID relief. There's just so much hardship and pain and suffering in Miami right now that the most important issue, basically the future of our community in the decades to come, seems frivolous or out of place. And what we need to do is find a way of connecting the climate crisis with the pandemic, connecting environmental justice with the economy of our society, and trying to find a path forward. So that's my answer to what now. What I'm going to do now is just have everyone introduce themselves. We're very small. All of us have been working with and know each other, but let me just try to do that really quick. So Adam, why don't we just start with you, and then we'll take it from there. Or better yet, let me start with our chair. Brian, let's start with you, and then Adam, you can wrap it up.
Cool. Okay. Well, Xavier's already paid me a lot of compliments, as he always does in these meetings, and I appreciate that. I share a lot of his sentiment. I think that we all had hoped for more out of the election, but I think we need to understand. I mean, I'm old enough, as Xavier is too. We've been through a lot of roller coasters, and we have to look at the victories we did have, in the sense of we do have a warrior for issues, and as the county mayor, which is an incredibly powerful position, and she's going to need support and allies that can constructively contribute to building the community that is concerned about this. And I think it's a real opportunity with some assertive leadership at that level. As mentioned, I think a lot of the business interests in this county are aware that this is not something this is something they have to deal with. And the key will be to finding ground with them, common ground with them, to move forward on things. And I think this is an opportunity. Daniela has been, I haven't been in Miami as long as some of you on the call, but in the 30 years that I've been here, she has been the center of being involved in the community, and has worked with so many different grassroots organizations, and has been there. And that's how she was able to overcome the sort of the wave against her, and locally, as she had such deep ties in the community. And I think that she's also worked across party lines, but of course successfully, and managed to be a strong advocate without alienating people. And I think this is an opportunity for us. So that's good. And again, nationally, if we can pull this out tonight, that's a huge deal, because for as deleterious as Trump was, he didn't enact a lot of legislation that causes, that put us the wrong way. It was mostly executive orders, and by appointing malignant forces in the different agencies, and that can be reversed fairly, just like he put it in. A lot of what he did can be fairly effectively reversed, at least because there wasn't a lot of permanent legislation that was put in place. There's a lot of relaxing of rules, as I understand it. Maybe that could be wrong about that, but I don't think that there was
Yeah, it was all
a
executive.
tremendous body of work that can't be reversed. So that's real positive. We have to look at that and again try to put aside our, if we can just get the 6 more, that weight will be out, and maybe we can move forward and try to develop common ground with folks. And I think that, trying to do what we're doing here was bring knowledge and trying to understand, and even not even just a lot of the climate messaging that comes out of the left is not always nuanced as it should be. And I think we've explored that here. It's obviously an existential crisis. I'm not saying that it isn't, but we may overreach a fair amount. And this has helped us to refine our messaging. I've learned a lot from the people that have talked. And I think that that's the key going forward, is move out of this thing about where we talk about belief and we talk about what the facts are and how it's not a matter of a political motivation that we want action. It's a matter of necessity. So I'm hopeful. I'm trying to be hopeful. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Brian. Sila?
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Sila. I'm a senior at UM, graduating now, December in 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
She's
thank
also
you.
my proudest student in my social art class, and she was a member of this group way before she was one of my students. I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling very anxious, even like knowing that Biden is probably gonna win. I don't know, it's been a roller coaster in my head, like for the past few, probably months, to be honest. It's hard to put words on like how I'm feeling exactly. But I think what we saw this like year is how like divided this country has become, and it's just increasingly being divided. And I'm really hoping that those who weren't in favor of Biden at all will be like open enough to at least give him a chance, and yeah, that we'll be able to find some common grounds. And as for Miami, I'm really happy that Danielle Levin-Cava got elected. I think that was some great news last night. We knew early enough in the night too, so it was a great way to start the night, I guess. And I think like despite whoever has been elected, we'll have to continue fighting, us, the people, because yeah, we don't really live in a democratic country, I must say. So we'll have to keep fighting on our side and keep pushing for what we really want in the future we want to live in.
I agree with you, Sila. We talked a little bit about this, but structurally, our governance is not equitable. It's not democratic. It's not one person, one vote. The very structure of the Senate defies that. So I know we're a republic, but the idea is that each of us have voice, and we are all equal under the law, and we should be equal in the way we elect our leaders. And everything from gerrymandering in the House to the way the Senate is constituted, where Wyoming gets as many senators as California, to the way the presidents are elected with an electoral college, and then the appointment of Supreme Court justices by, again, two flawed processes, an electoral college and a non-democratic Senate, make me wonder how, not wonder, but yeah, make me wonder how we have allowed our nation to, for all these years, continue to have the majority of a party vote for that party and somehow get less percentage of that vote at a state house, at a state Senate, in Congress. And how many times have we lost the national vote and still won the national vote but still lost an election? So yeah, I am here to agree with you that structurally, the way there's social and racial injustices, there is also structurally our governance itself isn't of the people. So we have fights, we have fights that are long, they're constitutional, they can only happen through amendment, but there needs to be justice here. And again, to lead with that conversation is a wonderful way of having someone turn around and walk away from me and call me a communist. So instead,
Yeah.
what I'm going to do is focus on your property values and my property values are in damage because we are doubling down on fossil fuels instead of looking at clean energy. And what can we do together with Daniela to try to make sure that we can protect our homes, right? And we just need to do more and more of that and find a way of communicating. Hope.
Hi,
Hi, Hope.
I'm Hope. Let me see if I can start a face. Yeah, I don't know which screen I'm on. I have two screens here.
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, there I am. There's no
Hey.
Yay, thank you guys. I have a site called pinecrestfloods.blogspot.com. And if you would all write that down and go to it, because I'm kind of the child or whatever you call the first person to actually experience a great deal of flooding because of the city's mistakes. There had been a horse pasture on the land at 96th Street and 72nd Avenue in Pinecrest, and it was decided that that land could be developed. Well, in order to do that, they had to take away the sump land. And the sump land was our natural way of getting water out, stormwater. And in the early 2000s, it became apparent that the canals were overflowing. So there's a mandate that if you build on a certain amount of acreage, you can no longer connect to the canals for drainage. So what happened is this land got filled and elevated, and now we flood terribly. I flood the worst because I'm on the end of it, but there's another street down from me that's going to start flooding even worse because they're lower. And up until now, Pinecrest has caged the water in without having drainage. And I went over to the sump land today and there's for sale signs pending. So the whole area now is going to flood. And I guess being a poster child isn't very much fun. But you get to, when you go to that site, pinecrestfloods.blogspot.com, you will see what is going to happen to all of us. And it's absolutely atrocious. Specifically, it's this area, but it's going to be all of us. And I don't know what to say, but if you want to see real photographs of Miami going underwater inland, we're not on an ocean here, we're not on the coast. This is inland flooding. And I started the site and it's kind of a mess. I don't have a lot of control over it. It's a freebie from Blogspot and I don't quite know what I'm doing. But you can follow it all the way down and you can see when it was a horse pasture and you can see what's happened. And it's really pretty treacherous. Pinecrest doesn't seem to care. They only want the development. And it's bad. And we've gotten a lot. I'm also a member of a group called Society for Environmental Journalists. And we've gotten a lot of PR on it, but PR isn't government. PR isn't lawyers. PR is good to a point. And then if everybody doesn't want to know about it, they don't want to know about it. So I urge you all to go to the site and see what awaits us unless we can somehow change things. And I think it's imperative for the change because what's happening to me is going to happen to everybody. So thank you guys.
Thanks.
That's
Phil.
my spiel.
Yeah. So Inigo, how are you feeling here after the elections, or what's up with you? Or just hello or say hi. I don't know, whatever.
I'm unmuted officially. Oh man, for anyone who doesn't
First of
know,
all, I want you to know that all of this is recorded. And I mean, if any of you have a problem, I can ask We have never done this, but I mean, I hope you don't have a problem. You understand everything's recorded and we put it online. And that's how our meetings are. So like, you know, I'm just, it's clear this is our meetings are recorded so that people can hear. Okay.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Inigo. And man, I mean, I try to stay away from being, you know, constantly reading the news. Like, I'm not the person who's watching the numbers live, because every time, like, I do that once and I'm like, oh God, you know, it kills me. So I'm just kind of a bit patiently waiting the results, quite nervous and anxious, you know, in my stomach and such. And I mean, aside, one of the things that's concerning me right now, aside from, you know, the violent polarization, because, you know, it has become violent, where people are just unwilling to listen to each other and have any respect for people with different opinions. Aside from that, another big problem I'm seeing is the problem, you know, I mean, we all hear about this, of misinformation, and just kind of how little the actual important things get talked about. So like how little people and media sites and just word of mouth in general is talking about things like, all right, well, what happens, you know, like what you were talking about in your introduction, well, what happens when we now have this president and this Senate and this Congress, all that, and the bit, just like the trouble of finding that out without running into 1,000 different useless informational sources. You know, the problem with actually looking into this, I find, you know, in a time when everything is so easy to learn, I think it's crazy with these issues how kind of how little transparency there is. And then also locally, maybe we could talk about this a bit as well. I was like, I'm very excited about Daniela living in Cava, because, you know, obviously everybody here really cares about the climate situation, and that's very good because she's all about that. But I also don't know much about her other politics. You know, like I know she's pro environment, but I don't know where she stands on pretty much, you know, the other issues, which there are numerous ones. So, you know, maybe if that's something that other people are thinking as well, perhaps that could be something that we could talk about. Also, like how her interaction will be with the other parts of our local governance. So yeah, that was just some things I was thinking about.
It's just, I mean, I don't want to spend a whole session on Daniela's thing, but she's been a duly elected commissioner for 8 years. So it's not someone who's just parachuting into County Hall.
Right.
He is someone who I met. I was a professor in the Department of Psychiatry. I was a research assistant professor in psychiatry. I was in charge of juvenile violence and delinquency prevention programs. And we had just gotten a really important grant from the Casey Foundation for $3 million to address mental health issues in Little Havana. And I was looking for an associate director. And here was this Columbia lawyer who went to Yale, who was interviewing with me. The truth is, it's not that I said no to her, she said no to me. You know, she had bigger things to do. But that's literally how she and I met. And since then, we have been walking step in step in working in our community. She created a group called the Human Services Coalition, which then got rebranded into Catalyst Miami. And Brian is 100% right. She won an election down here where I live in my district that she wasn't supposed to win, because government is run by lobbyists and by deep money. And she basically did it through her interaction in community. And then when she ran for mayor, she didn't just pay a fee to get in. She got 20,000 people assigned for her to get in. So she is someone who is of community. She's a grandmother. You know, she's someone who's always been involved with it. So she has serious political skills, and she has serious management skills, and she's an attorney, and she's got Ivy League all over her. So you know, I mean, she is progressive. She is a person who cares about addressing the weakest link of our community, because that's how strong we are. So I have nothing but good, happy expectations. The thing I think is hard for her and for the rest of us is for us. I think she's very good at moving the political needle on all sorts of issues, from the economy to this pandemic to all sorts of racial and social issues. I think it's harder for her to get 7 people downstairs to vote for a budget that she proposes that is going to ask us to fix a problem 50 years from now by investing today, or create different taxing districts or structures to address those neighborhoods that are going to be more vulnerable and eventually not be neighborhoods. Those are very difficult things for a present day politician who has an election in 2 years to vote for when the reward comes 50 years from now. And that's where we come in. That's how we reframe the issue. We understand it. We explain, hey, in 50 years, that's my granddaughter's home. I want it to be worth something, or whatever the policy that we're trying to effectuate. So for you, Inigo, what I think I want to say is what I told my class today, because we did spend a moment talking about this election, and that is that as an old guy, I have seen different generations of students, including myself at the University of Miami, and you guys are the most giving, open, and compassionate group of youngsters, right? Like, you are literally charitable and open and caring and empathetic, right? And that's hard because other generations were about me and stuff like that. 2, this climate crisis wasn't caused by you. You had little to nothing to do with it, right? You didn't elect the people in office, right? You were too young to do that. You did nothing wrong. And you will be the most victimized by this. You will suffer more than all of us will. So I really, really feel bad for you. And I also feel bad to the fact that you are landing in here in a very polarized place where even truth is suspect, where we for 4 years, you for 4 years have seen your leader model deceit, deception, and absolute lies, complete fabrication. So our society has been conditioned to live in this polarized, instant gratification, inhospitable sort of way of being. And now it's on you to try to figure out what that future looks like. And that's kind of the challenge here today. So I could, so anyway, that's how I see where we are. And I just thank you for being part of this dialogue, and for being involved. But what I'm really encouraging you to do, I think it's important for you to be in these spaces to learn, from ocean physicists, to learn from climate scientists, to learn from an artist. But I also think it's really, really important for you to carve your path out of here and to try to make change in the places and spaces and with the people you can impact the most. And that's really the most important thing we can do here.
Yeah. One thing before I guess I get off that I'd like to say, about that kind of relates to what you were talking about with my generation, I guess, and that relates back to what I was talking about with misinformation, that while my generation does look very promising in many senses, like you were saying, one of the things that worries me is how malleable we are, how persuadable we are, how quickly people can be persuaded. All these people that have quickly been persuaded for the good things right now may just as easily be persuaded for not so good things. So when it comes to misinformation and that sort of thing, that's one thing that worries me a little bit about this generation.
That's fair. In other words, there's not enough. That's why one of the things, Adam runs the Cortada Science Art Academy. It's a project we're trying to launch to teach students at Pinecrest Gardens. And one of the things we want you to do is to, to be creative, to be empathetic, but what we're looking for you to be a leader that is science literate, that understands, that can't be duped, right? That you can't just say something. I can't just be a motivational marketer and you're going to buy, what I'm saying. That's literally where the problem is. And again, by living in these echo chambers, A, but also by B, by having the kind of access to information that's Googleable, and that's all you don't dig any deeper. There's no real source of information or training or analytical skills. You just Google something and that's the truth, as opposed to really understanding that is a problem. And it's in our society as we move forward, right? There are different customs and different things that we do, and this is one of the challenges of this wonderful thing called technology, that in so many ways it also dumbs us down, right? It doesn't allow us to find the answers within ourselves. And yeah, that's I hear you. I hear you. Brittany.
Hey guys, so nice to meet y'all. I'm actually in Tallahassee right now. My name's Brittany. I formerly worked for a Democratic representative last year, and I got a job working for an environmental nonprofit up here. So I felt like that was a really good transition, and I kind of wanted to advance my career. But that being said, I worked for the Florida House for almost 2 years. It is very divided. And I just literally finished my grad program. I'm in the Master of Applied American Politics and Policy at FSU. And I wrote my thesis on the division. And my question was, does party involvement affect whether or not you can pass legislation? And to be quite honest, in my findings, I felt that the more involved with your party that you are as a Democrat, having worked for a Democrat, the less you can pass legislation. We have people in the House like Escamani and Carlos Guillermo Smith who go to Tallahassee and their constituents specifically elect them to go and raise awareness to these issues that we talk about on our HOA meetings. And they can't pass legislation because they are unwilling to accept the ideas of the other side as it relates to those prevalent issues. And I stand with them and I support them. But again, the results that we had from last night about the Florida legislature, like the state races, I think that was very concerning for me, just from having worked in the Florida House for like a year and a half. I knew the divide. I knew the stalemates that we had. We had a bill this past session, and I know a lot of people have different views on this, but they tried to pass a bill for education, like an entire education bill. And in there, they stuffed the fact that transgenders would be expelled from private schools. And there's just stuff that goes on like that all the time. Like they constantly try to demote
policy.
Yeah, they try to create policy to prevent us from being able to engage in our civic duty to put stuff on the ballot. They had a bill this last year to try to do away with unions, which is so important for not only teachers, but other people that are involved in their labor unions. And I'm just very concerned about Florida, knowing that now we have all these Democratic seats that we held have been flipped red. I'm very concerned about that. Like the idea of checks and balances, I don't even know if that's been thrown out of the window for Florida because we have flipped so many seats red. But aside from that, my fiance was a poll manager at one of the polling stations for the Leon County SOE, and I wanted him to kind of relay his election experience, because we've had all of this crazy fear-mongering lingo come from our current president about our democracy and how our election process works. That's simply I can't even, I don't know where he's, like, I don't know where that came from. So I want him to be able to explain what he's gone through and introduce himself. But thank you for letting me share, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. But
good evening, everybody. My name is Christopher Clavin. So I do all of the social media for the Leon County Supervisor of Elections, as well as I was the clerk for FSU during all of early voting and then on election day. So I can speak specifically for the student population on campus at our university, which, you know, will vary. However, the trend is definitely apparent that all of these students are voting exactly like their parents. Okay, so party identity is the #1 indicator of how your vote is cast in the first place. You know, name and everything else matters, but that still seems to be the case, and they're voting just like their parents. The second issue is voter misinformation, kind of like we were talking about before. So we saw it on both sides from both parties. Unfortunately, kids coming in, and then we did not get any of the registrations from iwillvote.com. So that's just a little bit of information. And that was a Democratic site that was supposed to be registering kids before the election day. There is a 30-day window in which you have to be registered to vote, as well as identify with a party, right? So these kids are just not aware of these different things. And the bad part is we spent 6 to 7 months advocating on campus and off campus. We had a Florida State University athletic drive with all of the different, you know, athletic departments. We had the football team, the baseball team. We did all of these different meetings to try to educate these students on campus. And then comes November the 3rd, okay? So we cast 600 ballots around, but we had to send 1,000 students away because they were at the wrong polling precinct, because these students are not aware that on November 3rd election day, you have to vote at your precinct specific site, okay? And it's just, it seems like it should be something that should be taught since grade school, but it's just not instituted anywhere. And I graduated from Florida State with a political science degree, okay? There are no classes that teach you about elections. There just are not in Brittany's master's program, not in our undergrad program. So it's just kind of a shame at this point. I really wish that they would institute it somewhere. Middle school civics would be a great place to just kind of plug that in. Make sure that that's common knowledge in middle school. Make sure that people know that Florida is a closed primary state, okay? Which is different depending on the state, but you have to be affiliated with one of the 2 major parties to vote in a presidential preference primary and a primary. It's just how the policy is written in our Constitution, and we have to follow our Constitution. And it's just the misinformation going around, 1, and then voter education 2. On top of that, I would say that the turnout was incredible. We were honored to host the Souls to the Polls event, which had Joe Biden speak in Tallahassee, and then they marched over. But part of that as well was they passed by a bar, and about 50 or 60 students were all chanting Trump 2020, and they flicked off the cameras in Al Lawson as they were marching to the Souls to the Polls with George Floyd's family, with Joe Biden, et cetera. It's just the disrespect and the ignorance of kids who don't understand the policies and what directly affects them. So they decide to vote how their parents vote, not knowing 3 policies that our current president has passed. Sorry, I got a little passionate, but that's all I have to say.
No, thank you. I mean, thanks to both of you for bringing that attention. I had those flags installed at our university. I saw through a photo I was sent a bunch of Trump banners at the same place where my banners had been earlier. I don't know that there were any Biden banners. I don't know that folks take it seriously enough. So you're right. I mean, part of me wants to laud you as that generation that has it all together. But truth is, yeah, there's a lot of divide, and let me just say it. There's also a lot of racism in America still. We're still a very racist country, and I know that that's the kind of conversation that gets the other side to go crazy because you don't see it that way. But there's just a lot of hurt and a lot of mending that needs to happen across this nation. But I just know that if there's a mourning mother or sister, you respect them. You know, you see them as human beings, and you absolutely respect them. And there's a lot of growing up we have to do as a nation still. So, you know, thank you. And thanks for bringing, you know, a little reality check to my rose-colored glasses about who we are. We are a polarized nation, but we need to find a way of healing. Okay, thank you. Carl? Do you want the colonies back?
Well, let's see how the vote goes. This is probably the most. Hi, everybody. I'm Carl. I'm from the UK. I've been in Miami since August 2018. I first met Xavier at Clio Symposium last year through probably the most powerful presentation I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing, which was the Do Not Open. If you've not seen it, heard it, it really struck a chord with me. And from that moment on, I kind of knew that I always wanted to be part of Cortada projects and what Xavier is doing and saying, and I get, I take some solace in being part of this group, because the issues are, I feel them as much as you all do, and obviously this election isn't, this next 4 years, if it is the current president that's going to win again, I'm not too sure how or what's going to happen or how we're going to feel about it, but like it's already been mentioned, we got to try and stay strong and try and still continue to support, especially Daniela and all the policies that she's, that she advocates for. Fantastic result there, as has already been mentioned. So while I'm still in Miami for another 2 years and maybe more, I'll certainly be supporting where I can. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Carl. Jamal?
Hello,
Hey.
I'm Jamal Wilson. I'm a graduate student at University of Miami, getting a master's in professional science in environment, culture, and media at the ABES Center of Ecosystem Science and Policy, the same program that Adam was in. He's now mastered of. And I'm also an intern with, also relevant, I am the marketing coordinator for the Graduate Business School, University of Miami, which gives me a kind of opposing perspective in my role as a graduate student studying climate change communication, an intern with Underwater HOA, and also as a native Miamian who's a Black male in his 40s. So I have a lot of lenses to look at the current state of events. I have a nephew who was not born in this country, whose father is not a citizen of this country, but is of course an American citizen because my sister is American. And so, it's really interesting how my neighbors, a lot of them are Trump supporters, they ask how he's doing, and whether they know or not, the man that he supports to lead this country would deport my nephew in a heartbeat. And so that kind of brings an interesting perspective on the whole election, because you can look at it from a policy standpoint, but you can also look at it from a personal standpoint. If you have a family member whose very existence is seen as a threat to your neighbors or the people that your neighbors support, it gives a very, very interesting, mental dilemma as to, how bad is this going to get in terms of the support that he gets, in terms of the actions and policy he's going to put in place, and the support for those policies. Another lens, of course, is as a man of color. How can the last 2 years or 3 years, or frankly 50 years, how could that not matter to the degree to which it's taken seriously enough to change an opinion about whether or not to support a specific candidate? How can a support of, for example, a call to execute 5 innocent men and then refusing to take that call back, how could that not be enough? How could just blatant dog whistle racist attitudes not be enough? And so it's very isolating, the selection, in the context of COVID, in the context of climate change, and in the context of being a person of color in a majority white neighborhood. I'm in the house where I grew up. My neighbors have not been here as long as I have, and yet they're flying giant Trump signs, so that's interesting. And so one thing I am grateful for is that I'm able to be a student of climate change communication and intern with Underwater HOA during such a turning point in our political history, our cultural history, and our invite now. That was a Category 4 that hit Nicaragua in November, which is, for anybody who's been following hurricanes, is quite the event.
Jamal, you're muted. Jamal? The last we heard
I'm not
is
sure where I left off, but
it's quite the event. Is the last.
So it's quite the event. But I'm grateful that I'm a student of climate change communication now, and not some uneventful time in the past. I'm grateful for the good that I have seen come out of people. I'm grateful for the change in perspective that I have seen due to the, systemic racism and police brutality that's been, quite frankly, Black people are not surprised, but that's been very, illuminating for other people who did not know that it was such an issue. So I'm grateful for the shift. I'm grateful for the change, but it's very important that we just keep in mind that this is not the end. We still have the next 10 years of accelerating climate change ahead of us. And so it's important to, I guess, which is the point of this meeting, tonight's meeting, is to keep the really important issues at the forefront, and to not just keep the momentum, but increase the momentum and increase the energy that we dedicate, as if the environment depended on it.
Jamal, we are less than 8,000 votes away from whether, at this point, what separates 4 more years of the hell you described is 8,000 votes in Nevada. with 86% of the vote in. 20,000 votes in Minnesota, right? Like the thinnest of margins. Like you could have blown and the election would have gone in the other way. And I come in peace, right? I come here trying to say, let's heal each other, right? But at a personal level, I am distraught and I am horrified. That's why I mentioned the structure of government and all that, because, you know, I want to blame the structure of an electoral college. I want to blame a bunch of other things. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of not good still in our nation. And that after an impeachment, after all the national security advisors on both sides of the political aisle, after so much has been learned about this man, I could sort of, but not really forgive you for the first time, but that you voted this way again and you doubled down on it the way you did is very painful to me. And I'm doing all I can to put my foot forward and to raise my chin. To see my dear friend Jose Javier Rodriguez lose an election because of lies, right? Because of literally to have that Cuban American son of Cuban refugees who was a peace core worker in Africa, who worked at legal services, who spent his entire life until he got elected as my state representative when I lived near Brickell, and then became my state senator here in Palmetto Bay. To have him lose because of lies where you taint people as socialists is just as painful as what you're, not as painful, but I understand the pain that you're feeling for your nephew. It just infuriates me. And I can, go to my corner and scream and attack. And that's sort of what I've been doing with climate. Or I can try to figure out how to heal this, but it's painful. And in Northern Ireland, I was there doing murals in 2000. And in Cyprus, I was there with kids, the Turkish and the Greek sides, kids whose grandparents had killed each other literally in a civil war. You have to come together. You have to figure out how to come together, because this hate only begets more hate and more division. And you become more other and I become more other. And it just breaks us apart. And it's hard to do when there's an intentionality by the president and when fear mobilizes more than hope. So it's really, really hard for us. But I am hopeful that it's going to be more than 8,000 votes that's going to do this. I'm a little bit hopeful for other states. But if all we have is that guy out of the office, then maybe together as a community we can begin to figure out how to be Americans again. Because right now, this is not what America should look like. Again, this is the America of lynchings. This is the America of a bunch of other really negative history. But I hoped that we had learned some of those lessons. And I'm just really devastated by where we are. And I'm trying to move forward.
For somebody who's seen 80 years of history, I'm sorry to tell you that we go through a 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And so the trajectory, when Martin Luther King talked about the arc of history going towards the right thing, he's basically correct. However, looking at it close up, looking at the high frequency noise that's superposed on that arc of history, it's a little hard to see it, and it's a little hard to appreciate it. And I think that if I take anything good away from the period of Trump, is that I think it's a warning sign for people of principle to safeguard democracy all that more jealously. And it's our government is basically a result of layers of compromise. So when they wrote the Constitution, Ben Franklin was at wit's end, and the reason we have two houses of Congress was basically the compromise that allowed the United States to start, to basically kick off. And there were a number of other compromises that were less fortunate than that, like the continuation of slavery as a way of compromising between the North and the South. So it's a long process. I think it is convergent on the long time scale, but it is awfully frustrating to see it up close and personal. And I can't remember a cycle in which we had somebody of Trump's ilk. Even our more self-centered politicians in the past couldn't hold a candle to Donald Trump's idiosyncrasies and training. And listening to the description, there was a wonderful PBS program on which contrasted Biden's upbringing and perspective with Trump's. And one of the real people that he followed was a guy named Roy Cohn, who was an attorney for the House Un-American Activities Committee during the McCarthy era. And so his hardball, nasty, no holes barred comes from Roy Cohn, and of course his father was built that way. But I mean that was his a role model, if you will. His father thought that Roy Cohn was just the right role model, so that we can understand, how he thinks. And looking at history is really valuable when you're trying to figure out what to do next, because then you have seen enough of the arc that you have some idea what works and what doesn't. So I take the present situation as a positive thing, in the sense that I think we're going to get out of Trump purgatory in the near future, and we can begin to reorganize. And I think he's a healing figure, and whether he can make business happen with Mitch McConnell remains to be seen. That is a tough order for anybody to do, but I think that without Trump as a negative reinforcement, that might be easier to do.
Thank you, John. Adam, let me give you the last word.
Thanks. And I guess I can just say that Brian wanted to let us know that he had about 5 minutes left. But
Okay.
I think we can wrap it up. And
When you wrap it up, also please let us know about our next speaker, or Jamal can. Go ahead.
I'll do that. Okay, well, I guess I would like to say that despite the different topics and how sad or frustrating or upsetting they may be, this has been one of my favorite meetings that we've had, in that we've all gotten to share and get to know each other better, and I think come closer. And so for that, I'm definitely thankful. I want to say, and it's just kind of going back to what actually John was just talking about in terms of, Zoom, looking at the close up compared to looking at things really zoomed out. Looking at things really zoomed out is what gives me hope. And I think when we're communicating with people, and again, like Jamal said, I didn't really introduce myself. My name's Adam Roberti. I work with Xavier, but I got a master's in environment, culture, and media, which is really this climate communications master's program. And when I just want to translate some of what I learned there into this conversation, because when we zoom out, we see that in all of human history, our generation is the first to understand the damage that we're doing, to truly understand the damage that we're doing to the climate, to the planet. And then really the first generation that has any meaningful shot of doing anything about it. So that alone puts a lot of pressure on us and a lot of onus on us. But at the same time that that's happening, we are the first generation to have the type of technology that we have, this digital revolution, like Dr. Vaughn talked to us about at a meeting a couple months ago. And our brains are not ready for this, and we are using these technologies in a way that we're simply not ready for. We don't know what the consequences are. Nobody does. The adults, say you old men in this conversation, you didn't grow up with it like me or Brittany did, right? You didn't have Instagram in middle school. You weren't living with the internet and Google from a young age, and so it's very difficult for someone of a previous generation to really tell us, or to be able to accurately assess the consequences. And we're trying, and there's a lot of research going on right now about it. And when you look at the technology and human behavior research, what we're seeing is that these younger generations are not as empathetic. We're not as compassionate. We're not as good at building these relationships because of this technology, and because of what is because of this, because we don't, oh, you can't see my phone, because of what we're so addicted to. But as unfortunate as this is, and I'm just being blunt about it, what gives me hope is that if we're able to pull ourselves back, and in these conversations that we have with people, talk about the intersection of the different crises. We have a public health crisis, we have a climate crisis, we have a mental health crisis, we have a racial justice crisis. Like, there are so many different, like, massive problems. We like a democratic crisis when you look at what's happening with Trump. There's just so many things that are wrong, but that are so intertwined and so interconnected. And I think that when we talk about climate change, it's really important not to sound like that's the only thing that we care about and that's all we know about. Like, we need to be, as this conversation has showed, all of us here have talked about how knowledgeable we are about all of these different issues, and how much we care about racial justice, about the economy and jobs. When we're talking to someone else, I think that, I guess one of the things that I want to just get across here, and it's like kind of the moving forward thing, how do we start to bridge this gap a little bit? We're dug in, right? Like, we're divided. The people who are on the right are more than likely not going to want to change their mind at this point or moving forward. Like, they're stuck, and we're probably stuck too, right? So how do you start to amend that? And I think when we start individually to learn more about all of these different issues and how they come together, and we start to really educate ourselves more, then when we're having conversations with people, we can decipher what they don't know anything at all about, and start to teach them about what they have no preconceived notions about. They're not going to fight you on something that they know literally nothing about. If they know nothing about the mental health crisis and how social media is impacting our empathy, right? Like, they're not going to fight you on it. They don't know anything about it. And so you can teach. And I think it's really important for us to come at learning from a perspective of sharing. Like, we want to learn to obviously understand the world better and widen our worldview, but to be able to share that with other people, and so that it helps them. And if they can start to, you can't connect the dots for them, but if you can give them new dots, there's a higher chance that we might actually make some change. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, we can't, as much, like, I know, like, in terms of what I know the most about, it would be communicating climate change, but I feel a big responsibility to learn a lot about so many other things, so that I can be well-rounded in these conversations, and try to have people understand different social justice aspects that they might not know about. And then they may be more willing to understand how those connect with sea level rise, and how that connects with climate gentrification, right? Like, there's just so much to know, and it's really hard to know all of it, and nobody does. But I think where we start to come together is when we start just genuinely caring about other people and teaching them, and not in an attacking way, not in a way that I'm not trying to change your mind or you're stupid or anything like that. It's just, I want to help you. I want to tell you what I know. And they need to feel like you just care about them and you want the best for them. And I don't know, I think that's the message of hope that I can kind of give, is that everyone in this group clearly cares a lot. And for us to move forward, we, like Xavier, like you said, we need to use the tools that we have at our disposal, the skills, the platforms, the voice that we have, to enact change. And I think we just need to be very mindful of our personal responsibility. And I'm one that's, the system needs to change. It's not about like changing your light bulb or going vegan, like, although those are good things, right? I do think that at the end of the day, it's going to take all of us, and we need to be the inspiration for so many more people. And I don't know who said the quote, but a good leader is not someone who has lots of followers. It's someone who creates new leaders. And so we need to take on the responsibility of being leaders, because we desperately need new leaders, as Brittany and Chris were talking about in the House and the Senate, and like, everything's a mess. So that's what I have to say. And hopefully we have all learned a little tidbit from each of us throughout this conversation.
Thank you, Adam. I share your opinion that this has been one of the most meaningful meetings we've had. So thank you. So the Underwater HOA, I want you to lead. I want each of you to be leaders in your own spheres, and to literally go out there and find ways of connecting with one another. What's left with HOA is Jamal's going to tell you who our speaker is. We'll continue having these monthly speakers, but I want each of you to be your own forces in our society. So the programming that we do literally happens through you, as you, right? Just as neighbors working with neighbors. So Jamal, just tell us who our next speaker is, an important one if we want to do this kind of work. And I'll have Brian adjourn us, okay?
Okay, so on December the 2nd, I believe, 7 p.m.
Jamal,
You're
you
muted.
Hello? Sorry. So on December 2nd, we are very, very pleased to have Alberto Cairo as a speaker for the Underwater HOA monthly meeting. Alberto Cairo is a journalist and data visualization designer. He joined the School of Communication in January 2012. He is director of the Center for Visualization, Data Communication, and Information Design at UM's Institute for Data Science and Computing, and he's a faculty fellow at the Abbas Center for Ecosystem Science and Policy. And he'll be speaking to the Underwater HOA community about how the importance of data visualizations has grown in the context of climate change communication.
Thanks. All right, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to that. And I'd like to echo Adam and Xavier's comments about how much it was meaningful to share with you all in this stressful time. And I think let's go and take these experiences forward, our own experiences, those who have been shared with us tonight, and have let's move the ball. I care for people, I guess. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.